Hi guys, Robo46 here, welcome yourselves back to MotoGP 20 on the Xbox One X. Now, we're going to be going through the results for the European Grand Prix, which happened at the weekend at Valencia. So if you don't want to know any results, turn away now because we're going to go into some spoilers. Right, Valencia. The first round of Valencia, because they go here again next weekend, but this one is classed as the European Grand Prix. It all started, well, pretty much before the Grand Prix even began, because Valentino Rossi had a negative test for, you know, the virus that he's been off with the last two races. He had to then do a second one just to make sure, which meant that he couldn't actually go out on track until Saturday when he got his second result back. So Yamaha drafted in the American Garrett Gerloff from World Superbikes to stand in FP1 and 2, and he done a pretty good job as well, to be fair. And it was pretty dodgy conditions. It was damp and wet, and you know, you had some drying track time, and it was just yeah, a little bit hectic, but he got on really well considering he's never ridden a MotoGP machine before. He definitely impressed a few people there. So yeah, you only sadly got to do FP1 and 2. Rossi did come back for FP3, but it was fully wet for FP3, and he couldn't put, although he went, I think it was about 8th in the session for FP3, he couldn't actually get straight through to Q2, so had to go through Q1, but actually didn't end up going through Q1. Well, he couldn't get through to Q2, so he had to start way down. Anyway, right. What else happened? Before the racing began as well, it was announced that Inie Bastianini and Luca Marini have both signed for Avintia Ducati in MotoGP. So both the Italian riders are going to be in Avintia Ducati. So that is that team sorted for next year. And yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how those two get on being teammates. Obviously they're rivals at the moment, but yeah, that's what's happening there. So Moto3, it was John McPhee who was on pole position. It was tricky conditions because it was a wet track, but it was drying, and McPhee managed to take advantage and take pole position. But yeah, the race for Moto3 was, as you'd expect, but maybe slightly more hectic than usual at one part, and then it kind of actually spread out a little bit, which is what we're not really used to seeing for Moto3. But there's a few reasons why it did spread out, and we'll obviously go into them in a second. But obviously the title for Moto3 is very, very hot at the moment. It's very, very close. Albert Arenas, who leads the championship going into the European Grand Prix, he was looking pretty good in wet and the dry conditions. In the dry conditions, especially in morning warm-up, he was showing some really good pace. So he was looking like he was going to try and get things back on track and try and take a win. But Ayagura had been having a better time this weekend as well, and been much more towards the pointy end, which is where we kind of expect him to be. The last few races have not been good at all for Ayagura. He's really struggled and suffered at most of the races recently, so yeah, it's good to see him back on form. But yeah, we had quite a few DNFs in the race, and it was a usual fight for the lead. Quite a big group of them. You had obviously Albert Arenas, you had Arbolino, you had Alonso Lopez as well, and Vietti as well. He was battling for the lead, but unfortunately for well, 3 riders, Vietti had quite, well, a massive high side in front of 2 other riders. You had Albert Arenas, who was in second place at the time. Vietti high-sided in front of him. Because of that, Albert Arenas obviously put the brakes on and shut off the throttle to try and avoid that. But Alonso Lopez, who was behind Arenas, unfortunately just ploughed straight into the back of Arenas and he went down. But Arenas stayed on, but obviously his bike got hit big time. And he tried to continue, but his bike was smoking. The exhaust was pretty much it dropped down, and it looked like he'd lost a foot peg as well. And he started losing places left, right, and centre, and he ended up having to pull into the pit. He had to sit in there for a few laps waiting for his team to repair his bike. Obviously, he was kind of hoping that maybe if he could get back out there, if enough people either fell off or had to retire, then he could scrape some points. But that was not going to happen with the amount of people that were still in the race. Vietti managed to get back on and carry on racing, but obviously by that time he was dead last in the race itself. But Arenas did eventually go back out. He was 3 laps down when he went back out. And when he rejoined, he managed to get into a battle with Ayagura's group that he was in, which had Darren Binder in as well, and a few other riders. And Arenas kind of made a bit of a nuisance of himself. He was trying to overtake some of the riders. He even overtook Ayagura, but ran wide and Ayagura got him back. Eventually they put the blue flag out when Arenas was in front of Darren Binder to obviously tell him to move out the way, because he'd been lapped 3 times, obviously the time that he lost in the pit, which he then didn't do. So Arenas ended up getting black flagged, which obviously he wasn't going to score any points anyway, but it would be interesting to see if he actually gets a further penalty, because what he'd done was not great. Obviously the reason that he had to pull into the pit in the first time was not his fault at all. He was just avoiding someone else's crash and then had someone plough into the back of him, so that was very unlucky for him. But then to come back out on track 3 laps down and then start interfering with other riders, one of which he's obviously fighting with for the title, that's just a little bit unsportsmanlike, if you ask me. But he got the black flag, and like I said, he may still end up getting a penalty for the next race, but at time of recording nothing has been said. He may get away with it, but I'd be very surprised if he did. So we'll have to look out to see if he does end up getting another penalty for the next race. Obviously with those 3 down, that allowed Raul Fernandez to pull away in the lead now. He had quite a big gap from the guys behind, and Ayagura, who was in second place at the time, he started having a bit of a scrap with the likes of Sergio Garcia and Tony Arbolino. Darren Binder was trying to bridge that gap, but when he was battling with Albert Arenas a little bit, he dropped back a little bit and wasn't able to catch that group. John McPhee, unfortunately, he ended up having a high side and crashing out as well, so his title chances are pretty much done now, unfortunately for the Scot. He pretty much crashed by himself. Just he was in the group, but he didn't get tagged or anything. He just ended up unfortunately high siding, and that's really put him out of the championship contention now. So it's definitely, Ayagura's time to try and shine and capitalise on those points, where earlier on in the season a similar thing happened when John McPhee crashed, and Albert Arenas had nowhere to go and ended up going into McPhee's crash bike. But Ayagura couldn't really capitalise back then, but today he managed to do just that, and he definitely put in a much better performance. You had Albert Arenas, who had a DNF. You had Alonso Lopez, who had a DNF, obviously with that crash from Vietti. McPhee as we've already said, had a high side. Masia, he ended up having a crash, as did his teammate Dennis Foggia. So both of the Leopards ended up crashing out. Tatsuki Suzuki, unfortunately for him, he left the door open a little bit with Rodrigo right behind him. Rodrigo went through, and yeah, they had a bit of contact, and Suzuki ended up going down. Kaito Toba, he ended up having a crash out as well, and also so did Suzuki's teammate Antonelli. Antonelli was actually looking a little bit more like his usual self. He was inside the top 10, whereas recently we've kind of seen him way outside the points. He ended up crashing out of the race altogether as well. So quite a few DNFs, 8 altogether. But yeah, Raul Fernandez took his first win in Moto3, the Red Bull KTM rider. Once he got that gap after that crash between Vietti, Arenas and Lopez, no one could close him down. He was able just to set his own pace. We know that he's quick over one lap by himself anyway, which is why he's had loads of pole positions this year. But yeah, he managed to get his first win of the season, followed by Sergio Garcia in second, and Ayagura coming home in third place. So good to see Agura back on the podium. And yes, that third place has helped him out in the championship as well. Just behind him is Tony Arbolino, who's kind of put himself back into the championship contention as well. Darren Binder came home in 5th place. Darren Binder was a little bit quiet this race actually. He was there, but not really as we've come to expect him. Carlos Tate came home in 6th, so a good result from him. Stefano Nepa came home in 7th. Then you had Alcoba 8th. Philip Salach in 9th, Sasaki in 10th, Riccardo Rossi in 11th, so a good result from him. Migno was 12th, Finati was 13th. Finati did have a long lap penalty. Dennis Onchu was 14th, and Rodrigo got to the final point in 15th place. And we had Yamanaka 16th, Yuki Kuni in 17th, Dupasquier in 18th, Pizzoli 19th, Bolters in 20th, Koffler 21st, Powie in 22nd, and Vietti, who had that high side earlier on in the race, he came home in 23rd place. So that was the race for Moto3. Like I said, after that crash between the 3 riders, it did kind of spread out a little bit. But Ayagura, with that 3rd position, if he had managed to get 2nd place, that would have made even more of a difference. But Albert Arenas still leads the championship now on 157 points. He is now just 3 points ahead of Ayagura in 2nd place, who's on 154. Then you go 20 points back from Arenas, and it's Vietti in 3rd. And then 23 points behind Arenas is Arbolino. And Masia in 5th place is 24 points behind Arenas now. So the top 5 all separated by a whole race win's worth of points, 24, or just under a whole race win's worth of points. And then McPhee in 6th is 38 back, which is mathematically still possible, but it's going to be very difficult to do that. Fernandez is still in 7th. He's just 1 point behind McPhee now on 118. Darren Binder's still in 8th. He is definitely out of it. He's 56 points behind now. And Suzuki in 9th is 74 points behind. So that is that. Over now to Moto2. And it was Sam Lowes who was starting on pole position for this one. And had been going well all weekend in wet and the dry conditions. And was showing that he's serious about trying to win this title. Obviously leads the championship going into this race ahead of the Beast Bastianini in 2nd place, and Luca Marini kind of languishing a little bit in 3rd position in the championship after having a few bad results by his standards. So yeah, Sam Lowes actually got a pretty bad start off the start and got pushed wide through turn 1. You had Bezecchi, who pretty much got into the lead straight away, And that's pretty much where he stayed the whole race. He set a really good pace, and yeah, he just done everything right this time. He tried doing that at the first Aragon race, and of course ended up crashing out. But this time he managed to put Aragon to the back of his mind and put a really strong race together. Joe Roberts was at the sharp end as well. He qualified pretty well too, and yeah, was looking pretty good. But unfortunately, he ended up crashing out just a few laps in, and yeah, his what would have been probably a decent result if he'd stayed on, unfortunately turned into a DNF, as did Hafish Syrin, who's been having quite a few big crashes recently. He crashed on the same lap as Joe Roberts. So Sam Lowe started to make his way forward through some of the riders, and he managed to make some positions up, and he managed to get into third position just behind Remy Gardner at the time, and was kind of struggling getting past Gardner. He put a few moves on him, but was kind of losing the front as well, and had a few warnings and moments, and that allowed Gardner back through. But Sam did eventually manage to get through on Gardner, a bit of a block pass, but it worked out well for him. And yeah, he then went on the hunt to try and close down Marco Bezzecchi. He managed to get the gap down to about 0.4 of a second, but Bezzecchi was able to ultimately, over the whole lap, pretty much keep the gap at about 0.6 of a second. So Sam would bring it down to about 0.4 3/4 of the way through the lap, but by the start finish line the gap was always about 0.6 of a second. So Sam was pushing, he was trying his best to try and close in on Bezzecchi, but unfortunately he pushed too hard, and yeah, with just 7 laps to go, Sam Lowe's unfortunately tucked the front and went down, and unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to get the bike started quick enough to be able to rejoin the race. So yeah, a DNF for Sam Lowe's. We also had a DNF for Digi Antonio. He crashed out. Simone Corsi, he ended up crashing out as well on the MV Agusta. Again, he lost the front end, and Chantra as well ended up crashing out. It was quite weird actually, because you had Simone Corsi crash out with 20 laps to go, and when the crash-in graphic comes up on screen, first of all it comes up with their initials. So with Simone Corsi it comes up with SC, and then obviously it then does spell out their full name. And then 4 laps later, SC came up again saying that they crashed, and then it spelled out the name, but it was Chantra. And I thought, oh, maybe Corsi got back on and then crashed again, but no, it was Chantra who ended up crashing the second time. So yeah, that was all the DNFs for Moto 2. Bastianini, he was languishing down in about 10th place at one point, but again, I mean, he didn't qualify that well either. He started to make his way forward once they kind of got the hurry up from seeing Lowe's was out. Start putting on some more passes, as did Luca Marini as well. Again, kind of struggling a little bit, but once he saw that Lowe's was down, he kind of picked up his pace. It was good to see Lorenzo Baldassari back on some sort of form. Unfortunately, we didn't have Jake Dixon racing this weekend. He unfortunately suffered a crash and injured himself. I think he's fractured a wrist, so he probably won't be back for the next race as well. Maybe not even the final race either, but yeah, unlucky for Jake Dixon. Would have been good to see what he could do around here, but it is what it is. His teammate was doing well to begin with. He was in the top 3, but then slowly started dropping back through the order. But yeah, Marco Bezzecchi pretty much led from start to finish, from corner 1 on lap 1 to the lead, the end. He set some good pace, and like I said, no one could really get too close to him. Sam got the closest, about 0.4, but that was it. And obviously then Sam ended up crashing whilst trying to push to catch Bezzecchi. So Bezzecchi won, followed by Jorge Martin coming home in second place. Good ride from Jorge. Remy Gardner came home in third place, so back on the podium for Remy Gardner. Good to see that. The Beast came home in fourth position, so just off the podium, but obviously gaining some points over Sam Lowes. Lorenzo Baldassarri is probably his best result, maybe even all season. Baldassarri has not had a good season at all this year. So, yeah, it was good to see him come home in fifth place. He was battling with Luca Marini, who came home in sixth position. Then you had Hector Garzo in seventh. Bullaga, a top 10 for him, in eighth. Then in ninth place, you had Vierge. Jorge Navarro in 10th place. Jorge Martin was second. Aaron Canet, he was 11th place. Nagashima 12th. Schrotter 13th. Bo Ben Schneider in 14th. And Stefano Manzi took the last point scoring position in 15th. Then you had Marcos Ramirez in 16th place. Edgar Pons in 17th. Andy Izdihar in 18th. Luti 19th. Dalla Porta 20th. Kazma Daniel in 21st. And Bisikursky in 22nd. So that was Moto 2. Again, a pretty standard Moto 2 race. Not too spread out. I mean, it did look like it's almost going to become a Moto 3 race at one point when you had quite a big train of them. But that was, before Sam Lowes crashed out. So, the championship. Obviously, with that DNF and Bastianini finishing in fourth, that has now given the Beast the championship lead on 184 points. Sam has now dropped to second position, but he's only 6 points behind, so not much in it at all. Obviously 50 points still left on the table. Third position, Luca Marini, 19 points behind, so still under whole race wins of points. Marco Bezzecchi is fourth, 29 points behind, so a little bit more difficult for Bezzecchi, but it's literally between the top four of the championship now. Those are the only ones who can mathematically actually win and fight for the title this season, because Jorge Martin, who is in fifth place, he is now 59 points behind in the championship. Remy Gardner in sixth is 83 points behind. Nagashima in seventh is 99 points behind. Joe Roberts in eighth is 104 behind. And Luti in ninth is 112 behind. So that was Moto 2. Now it's time to get on to MotoGP. And MotoGP, it's all change again. Well, not really championship standings wise, but more twists and turns in the championship fight, that is for sure. Because, on lap 1, so Paul Espargaro started on pole position on his KTM, and the two Suzukis were, I think Rins was on the front row and Mir was on the second row, but both looking very, very strong. And Paul Espargaro led for a little bit, and then Alex Rins managed to put a move on him up the inside and managed to take the lead. And then a lap or two later, Joan Mir done pretty much exactly the same move using the Suzuki's turning power to get underneath the KTM rider and put them Suzuki 1-2 with Alex Rins leading and Joan Mir in second position. But back on lap 1, it was a disaster for Fabio Quartararo. So Alicia Spargaro ended up slightly on the outside of Quartararo, But Aleix ended up tucking the front and crashing out on the Aprilia. And then literally almost the same time, Quartararo done pretty much exactly the same. It's through this corner here we're at now. And yeah, both tucked the front and both went down. They didn't touch each other. It wasn't contact that caused them to crash. I think Aleix initially went, and then maybe Quartararo just tapped the front brake just to obviously in a bit of a panic, and unfortunately lost the front and went down as well. Aleix didn't get to remount and carry on, but Quartararo did. He actually got up pretty quickly, if I'm honest. He managed to get his bike going pretty quickly as well. But yeah, he was last position at the time. So the two Suzukis at the front were still fighting. Rins was trying to pull away. Mir was trying to go with him and was able to. It's worth noting as well that Maverick Viñales had to start the race from pit lane. And yeah, he had to obviously wait about 5 seconds as well to come out of pit. So that gave him a pretty bad deficit coming out of the pit. All because of Yamaha have been given a penalty for their engines and using some different valves, which they weren't supposed to, and they've also been adopted 50 championship points, constructors championship points I should say, not riders. So yeah, not really a good thing for Yamaha at the moment. They are just not really where they should be, and obviously the fact with the engines as well, and Viñales going on to an engine which hasn't been allocated. It's yeah, not good at the moment for Yamaha, that's for sure. Rossi, unfortunately, his bike ended up breaking down a few laps in, so that was his race done. So obviously Rossi's return after missing 2 races, and he only managed to do a few laps before his Yamaha broke down. So yeah, Yamaha are not in a good place right now, and it's sad to see. But what is great to see are the Suzukis being very, very strong. Alex Rins made a little bit of an error and struggled to select the right gear, and ran a little bit wide into one of the corners, which allowed Joan Mir to get up the inside. In fact, it was the same corner both of these Suzukis got past Pol Espargaro earlier on in the race. So yeah, Joan Mir got into the lead, and then Joan Mir done what he'd done at Red Bull Ring before that was red flagged, and just managed to start stretching the lead, and he was on course to take his first ever win in MotoGP. Obviously he should have already had one, but unfortunately that did not work out. But it was good to see both Suzukis really, really strong. Pol Espargaro was not that far behind him either. He was keeping them honest, and he was obviously trying to catch up to Alex Rins to try and take that position off of him and maybe get on the second step of the podium. Trying to also close in on the podium was Nakagami. He was making his way through the field. He just got past Miguel Oliveira, who was in 4th place at the time. He qualified pretty well and had a pretty decent race, 4th place for most of the race. But Nakagami got him towards the end. And then Nakagami tried to start closing in on Pol Espargaro, and was closing in a bit, but just ran out of time towards the end. You had battle with the Ducatis as well, with Zarco running in about 5th position for quite a lot of the race, but then Jack Miller managed to come past him, and ultimately Andrea Dovizioso got past him eventually as well. Brad Binder was making his way through the field. He managed to get past Zarco, managed to get past Dovizioso as well, and at one point set the fastest lap of the race as well. So Brad Binder, he started to get going really well. He actually had a long lap penalty as well for taken out Jack Miller at Aragon. So he had to pay that as well. So to come back and still be able to fight through the pack was impressive to see. Bagnaia unfortunately crashed out on his Pramac Ducati. Tito Rabat ended up retiring. I think the writing's pretty much on the wall now for Rabat. He's not going to be there next season with Bastianini and Luca Marini moving up to Avintia next season. Alex Marquez had a bit of a fight with Andrea Dovizioso and was battling really well. And then Dovi put a bit of a... It wasn't a dirty move, but it was the fact that he kind of took his braking space away from him a bit. So Alex Marquez was in front of Dovi coming out of the final corner. Dovi then obviously managed to get past Alex using the Ducati Grunt. But getting into the braking zone, Dovi put the brakes on, but then moved across to the right-hand side of the track where Alex Marquez was, and just took a little bit of space away from Marquez. And then because of that, Marquez had to try and take turn 1 a little bit tighter, and there had been a damp patch at turn 1 through all 3 races, Moto3, Moto2 and MotoGP. And unfortunately Alex Marquez then ended up tucking the front and crashing out of the race, and that was only with 4 laps to go, so wasn't good to see that. Lorenzo Savadori as well, he ended up having a crash a bit earlier on in the race, but he managed to remount, and he was actually in 15th place, which is 1 point, and then literally with 2 laps to go he decided to pull into the pit. So if he'd stayed out, he would have got a championship point. So Savadori is now taken over from Bradley Smith for the final 3 races, which is really weird. I don't know why they've decided to do that with 3 races to go. Savadori is an Aprilia test rider, obviously, as is Bradley Smith. But yeah, they decided to give Savadori the last 3 races and take Bradley Smith off, which was, yeah, a bit weird to see, but it is what it is. That's Aprilia for you. Yeah, so he pulled into the pit with 2 laps to go and retired from the Grand Prix. But Joan Mir did go on to take his first win in MotoGP, and his teammate Alex Rins held on to 2nd position. So Suzuki 1-2. Polo Espargaro came home in 3rd place, so a good result for the KTM rider. Obviously just 2 races left for him on that KTM before he moves to Repsol Honda next year. Nakagami did come home in 4th position, just ahead of Miguel Oliveira in 5th. Then you had Jack Miller, who was top Ducati, in 6th place, just ahead of Brad Binder in 7th. Andrea Dovizioso came home in 8th. Then you had Zarco in 9th, Petrucci in 10th. Then you had Franco Morbidelli down in 11th place. Not a good race for Morbidelli, considering what he managed to do at Aragon last time out. It was a bit disappointing to see Morbidelli down there, but he was the top Yamaha in 11th place. So it just goes to show that Yamaha really been struggling around Valencia this year. Be interesting to see how they get on next weekend when we go back here for the next race. Stefan Bradl came home in 12th place, and you had Maverick Vinales, who obviously starting from pit lane, ended up in 13th place. And Fabio Quartararo did get 2 points to come home in 14th place. That's all the finishers. Like I said, Savadori, who was 15th at the time, retired with 2 laps to go. So yeah, only 14 finishers in this race. Oh, I forgot to mention Cal Crutchlow as well. He crashed out of the race. He crashed out with 22 laps to go. The Brit crashing out and taking another DNF. So yeah, just 14 finishers. And the championship is well and truly within Joan Mir's grasp now. And I said a few rounds ago that I thought Mir is going to win the championship, but I kind of thought he was actually going to end up winning it without even winning a race. He's been the most consistent this season. And we usually see Mir come strong towards the end of the race. That's when he starts picking up his pace and picking people off. But yeah, he's finally taken his first win, and because of that, he's really extended that lead in the championship now. And with Quartararo going down and Vinales as well, obviously finishing way down outside the top 10, Joan Mir on 162 points. He now has a 37-point lead over both Quartararo in second and Alex Rins now, who has moved up 3 positions to third. So yeah, all Alex Rins has got to do, I think he's just got to finish, I think it's third next time out, and that will be the championship for him. He's got one hand on it, and he's got a good lead with 2 races to go. So 50 points left on the table, and he has a 37-point lead over both Quartararo and his teammate Alex Rins. Maverick Vinales, he was he's dropped down to 4th position now. He's only 4 points back from Rins and Quartararo's, but he's 41 points behind altogether now. So yeah, he's pretty much out of it. Still mathematically possible, but I can't really see that happening. Franco Morbidelli as well, he's dropped a position. He is now 45 points behind. Again, it's a big ask to do anything from there. As is Andrea Dovizioso, he is also 45 points behind. So yeah, the dream for Dovi to win the title this year is not going to happen. It is not going to happen. Those Ducatis just haven't seemed to work very well at all this season. They've had loads of troubles, obviously loads of troubles within the team itself. So it's not really been a good year, and the fact that Dovi is either going to retire, he's either going to go to Aprilia, or he's going to become a test rider, and there's a possibility of becoming Yamaha's test rider as well. Who knows what he's going to do, but he's not going to win the 2020 World Championship. Again, still mathematically possible, but yeah, it's not going to happen. Paul Espargaro, he actually moves up 1 position to 7th, but he is completely out of the title now. He is 56 points behind. Nakagami has dropped 1 position to 8th. He's 57 points behind, so he is out of it as well. And Jack Miller in 9th position is 70 points behind. So we had our 9th different race winner of the season, and yet another first time winner of the season as well. So really good job for Mir. I did kind of think he had a win in him, but I didn't know if he's going to be able to do it this season. But yeah, that win has really played into his hands for that title, that championship. I think it's pretty much his to lose now. It's within his grasp. Like I said, if he can score some decent points in the next race, or basically finish ahead of Quartararo and Rins, then that's going to be job done. That's pretty much the way he's got to look at it. He can get it wrapped up with 1 race to go. And, you know, a few races ago we were thinking, you know, it's definitely going to go down to the final race of the season. Not necessarily anymore, because, you know, like I said, if he gets a decent result in the next race, which is very, very likely, then yeah, that could be job done, and he could go to Portimao as the 2020 MotoGP World Champion. And how good for Suzuki would that be? And it would be nice to see Rins finish in 2nd place and have Suzuki take a 1-2 in the title. That would be really, really good for Suzuki. But you can just see through the corners how well that Suzuki turns, even compared to the KTM. It just turned underneath it, like, pretty much with ease. And we saw it at Aragon as well, especially for the last couple of corners. Turning a lot tighter than even the Yamahas. just able to get that bike to turn really, really well. And it's no slouch in a straight line as well. It's definitely a really good all-round package for Suzuki. And by the looks of it, one of their riders is going to be the world champion. So obviously anything can happen. Anything can still happen. There's still 2 races to go. But the ball is in Mir's court now. Depends what he decides to do or what he's able to do next time out at Valencia again. Obviously, some of the riders, or most of the riders, will benefit from already having a race here, as will Mir. So we could see completely different results next time out. We don't know. But we will know this time next week. But yeah. My prediction for Mir for the title, which I made maybe a few races in, maybe halfway through the season, is coming true. I don't usually get predictions right, to be fair. But anyway, guys, that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more content, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to stay safe and to wash your hands. See you.